this DJ is too busy. We are giving you all things, everything. Our DJ is on the decks. Join me, Shayulenga, for all this and more on The Tribe, exclusive to One Africa TV.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this edition of the Business Brief, a new show on One Africa where we focus on business news making headlines in the country and news worth knowing locally, regionally and globally that affect the Namibian economy and you as a citizen. I am your presenter, Morna Ikosa. In this episode, we're going to look at news-making headlines from the online business newspaper, The Brief, and after that, we'll be diving into a discussion about the domestic tourism sector in Namibia. Before we continue with the show, it's time for a quick commercial break, and then we'll be right back.
Upgrade your DSTV package to enjoy all the content you love. That means if you're on Access and you upgrade to Family, you get boosted to Compact. If you're on Family and you upgrade to Compact, you get boosted to Compact Plus. And if you're on Compact and you upgrade to Compact Plus, you get boosted all the way to Premium.
Welcome back. It's time for a look at the business news making headlines in the online business newspaper, The Brief. One of the news stories in the online newspaper, The Brief, concerns the signing agreement between the Development Bank of Namibia and the Namibian Trade Forum to provide funding to export-oriented enterprises and startups taking advantage of the African Continental Free Trade Area. Joining me in the studio to talk about this agreement and what it means to SMEs is local business owner Stefan Yihu. Stefan, welcome to studio.
Thank you, Mona.
In the news story about the agreement, the DBN Chief Executive Officer said both existing and new businesses are performing poorly due to a lack of entrepreneurial skills, limited demand for local goods and services, and a lack of coordination to the enterprise financing and support ecosystems. Some of the reasons for the slow growth of the Namibian SME sector. Now in studio, I want to really just unpack this agreement, Stefan, and tell me, first of all, do you consider yourself as an SME owner?
I do, Mona. I think that's one of the things that we have in Namibia. When we look at the size of our businesses, we often think of SMEs as almost startups and very small businesses.
Right.
Well, I believe in our economy, actually, there's a lot of businesses that are owned by a few shareholders that have employees that less than 100, and in global terms, doesn't generate these bigger revenues. And I think a lot of the businesses that in our minds, when we only look at ourselves in the country, we think they're big, but they actually are SMEs. Right. And I think it's, when we look at this agreement, it's important to think a little bit bigger than startups.
Okay, that's really good. So would you agree? I mean, the CEO has said poor entrepreneurial skills, lack of coordination or support for local goods is one of the challenges. Are there any other challenges that you think SMEs are facing?
So, yeah, Mona, I really agree with what he says. I think one of the big things comes back to my previous point is around scalability. And do we have businesses that are at the point where they are mature enough to be able to scale and to really grow? So that has to do with, yes, the skill that the entrepreneurs and the people who own the business have. It has to do with the workforce and the skills that are available in the country. And can we as Namibians, do we have the skills base to work in these businesses and to help them excel? And yes, a portion of that is when you look at the revenue line, where will we earn the revenue from? Are we innovative enough? Are we world aware enough to see where the opportunities are elsewhere in the globe for us to provide products or services to?
I love that. You actually mentioned innovation, and it's actually interesting that the CEO didn't mention that, the lack of innovation or creativity. So how do you think, as SME owners, how can they overcome these impediments that the CEO has identified?
I think the one thing is a mind shift, and to say if we want to build Namibian businesses that really has the chance to grow strongly in our economy and to expand into our export markets, in our mind frames, we have to look at a different size of business and really say, let's look at the businesses that have a base already, that has been existing for some time, that has employees already, that has some supply chains and revenue streams in place, and how do we help those businesses to scale up and to grow? And I think both as SME owners, we have to think about that differently and say which of these programs and things are out there that we should be utilizing in our businesses, and also when the people that roll out these programs and do the training need to, in my view, shift their focus a little bit and say, well, it's going to take us very, very long to get a startup with 5 staff members to the point where they are effectively exporting, as opposed to if we take a business that has 50 people working for them and we help with systems and product development and other aid in that business, the time it's going to take us to have an impact would be much shorter.
So do you think this agreement would be really beneficial to SME owners like yourselves?
I think definitely there would be opportunities. Obviously, when we look at this agreement, it is very focused on export products and in terms of the type of business that you can run, you need to be operating in that area. Of course, we operate a media business, so we're exporting ideas all the time, hopefully. Yes. But definitely for businesses that are in that area and are product orientated, there's great opportunity in there. And if you look at the financing support that could come from DBN, and where DBN say, okay, we'll get the Namibia Trade Forum to help us build skills and processes and give business support, there's a great opportunity in it.
So tell me, Stefan, I'm really enjoying this conversation. So Stefan, tell me, what experience or expertise do you think SMEs need to really possess in the coming years to actually survive in this economy?
So Mona, I think in any business, the technical skills for the area that you're operating in obviously is important. And you constantly need to excel and train on that and understand the global standards. So that's something that we need to do. And that is to do with the workforce that you have and the skills base in the workforce. So we need to look at that. The other thing that I think is important is, and it's one of the things I believe about business. A business is made up of good, strong processes and systems. True. And the stronger you're able to build systems that can deliver almost irrespective of who's in the leadership of the organization or who are the individuals that work in the organization at the time, the stronger you're able to build those processes systematically, the stronger the business will become. And I think that is something which is lacking in a lot of Namibian businesses, and I include my own business. We try. Right. It's a difficult thing to do, but it's really one of the places where we need to pay attention to say, how do we build these organizations that will last for hundreds of years? When I left as an owner, when a lot of the employees have left, and it will stand because we built strong processes and systems that can continue. And part of that is the relationships that we build with suppliers and clients.
Stefan, we now have to wrap up. It was really lovely having you in studio on the other side of the camera. So thank you so much for joining us in studio.
Thanks, Mona. It was a privilege to be here.
Awesome. We're going for a quick commercial break, and when we return, we'll be talking about the domestic tourism industry and its impact on you.
You know, you're a young kid, right? For me, I started writing music when I was 9.
I don't like going into something. See, when I came in the music industry, I didn't want to lose.
Tourism is the fastest growing economic sector in Namibia and employs over 100,000 Namibians, especially from rural areas, making this sector an important employer that helps reduce rural poverty. This information is valuable to you as a consumer, as it provides you with information on what's happening in the domestic tourism industry. Here with us to tell us more about the tourism industry, especially the domestic market, is Gita Pitsold, CEO of Hospitality Association of Namibia. Thank you, Gita, for joining us in studio today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. So Gita, let's start with this. I'm really curious, and I'm really happy to have you in studio. Tell me a little bit more about HAN. You know, what is it objectives? What does it stand for, and what do you do?
Well, HAN actually celebrates its 35th year of existence this year.
Wow.
We were founded just before independence in 1987 because there was ignorance about tourism. So we had a few hotels, 1 or 2 guest farms, a motel in Windhoek. But tourism was actually not an entity that is, that was recognized as an economic powerhouse then. But we saw it coming because there was a lot of interest, especially with us becoming independent, that there was a lot of interest in Namibia. And HAN, the founders of HAN came together in 1987 to see how they could actually foster an environment where tourism could flourish. So they came together, spoke to the authorities at the time to say, please, we need certain regulation to make sure that when we then open up to the international market, we have certain standards. We know how to present ourselves. We put Namibia on the map, as it were, as a destination of choice. So for more than 35 years, we've been trying to put Namibia on the map, and I think we have succeeded. We've come a long way. There have been lots of upheavals and changes and focus, etc. Our main source market is historically linked to the European links that we had with the missionaries of the Scandinavian countries, and obviously German-speaking Europe have always had the historical and the family links even before independence, and developed into our biggest source market, which it is still today. That's why you see the direct airlines from Central Europe, from Frankfurt. For the first time ever this year, we've had one airline flying 10 times a week to Namibia.
Wow.
Linking us to our central source market, which is Frankfurt. So the German-speaking Europe, not only Germany, but Switzerland and Austria have also been very, very regular visitors to Namibia. But in the time, we saw that, first of all, Namibia is a very seasonal country, so many of the international tourists would choose our winter season because then animal sightings are the best. It's dry and you could actually spot animals at the waterholes. And it's the summer holidays. The whole of Europe goes on holiday basically between July and September. But because we have such a huge development in tourism, people saw that to be an economic sector that one could grow. So many people started getting involved in tourism, setting up smaller guest houses, bigger lodges, huge lodge groups in the last couple of years. And for that, we really need to spread our focus and to diversify our source markets, looking into the Americas and also maybe the Balkans and the Baltic states for tourism development in the future.
Wow. That's amazing developments. So 2019, when COVID hit, there are some lodges that I never would have imagined traveling with my family. But because of COVID and the special prices, we could now afford to. So the issue, I think, was always around affordability. And so what is HAN doing now, especially after COVID or post-COVID, to grow this domestic market to get even bigger?
Well, as I said, there has always been a market, and people basically adapt their product to suit the various markets. COVID was a special time, and because the international borders were locked, we set out to say either we close shop completely and give up, or we keep our spirits going. So let's open up, let's entice Namibians if they can travel to actually come to our lodges. The special prices that were offered at the time were cut to the bone. I must admit that some of our lodges actually put in money to be able to open their houses. Wow. So it's not lucrative at all. But what we have been doing even before COVID, because we saw the interest of people wanting to travel, wanting to get to know their own country, and that to us is a very important component because we need ambassadors of our country to sell it.
Right.
Word of mouth is still the best marketing. There have been products developed that take people into the same area, into the same kind of attraction field, but at different levels. So it's like if I have the budget to buy myself a very smart SUV, I can do so, but if I don't have the budget, I have to opt for the smaller van.
Right.
In tourism, it's the same. The problem is that many Namibians see those very flashy destinations that are on Instagram that have the VIPs come there. They feel that these should be attainable for the normal person as well. And that's where the difficulty comes in. I myself can't afford all the lodges, but we do have the Lewis Hamiltons of this world that can.
Right.
And we should not think that we should be entitled just because we are Namibians to go to those very, very pristine lodges that have been taken a lot of investment and dedication to set up for a certain lucrative market that Namibia needs to guard, because we are seen as a hidden gem for Africa, best kept secret, and many people come here for exactly that exclusivity. But there are options for the domestic tourism market in various categories, from camping to go to lodges that are affordable, definitely. Right. And we also have seasonal prices. So, coming up now between middle December to June next year, we have a low season, and very, very many of our establishments do offer Namibian prices, especially in those low seasons.
Okay, so will you ever then move to having local rates? And because I remember there's some establishments that have local rates, regional rates, and international rates. Is that something that's always been there, or is it something that you're now going to enforce so that, for example, if the local wants to go through low season right now, they are then able to use the local rate?
Definitely. I mean, we do have Namibian rates, we've got SADC rates, and then the international rates and the high season rates. What is key is that these rates are not publicized very openly, because remember, our international clients would also be on Instagram and on Facebook and on all these social media platforms. And they'd sometimes take exception to the fact that we half the price for Namibians for the same kind of product. So I always entice Namibians to actually be daring enough to just call up a lodge to say, please, have you got a special going? And I know that many of those lodges would then say, okay, my lodge is running at an occupancy that I would like to improve, so I'm going to open it up for a special for Namibians, or, special events coming up in the early part of the year, independence celebration, that they would go for these specials. But we wouldn't publicize them openly, because we would then upset the international market, which we have a standing professional relationship with. But Namibians should be daring enough to consult, phone up, write an email, call them up, send them a WhatsApp, or, many of our establishments do have Facebook pages as well, and you can interact with them on social media as well.
Kita, that was really insightful information. I learned quite a lot. But we're definitely going for a quick commercial break. But when we return, we'll continue our discussion on the domestic tourism sector and how it impacts you.
When life gets busy, you can always rely on GoTV to make things a little easier. Upgrade to the next package and we'll boost you to a higher package for free. GoTV. Love it.
Welcome back if you just joined us. We are talking about the state of the domestic tourism sector and how it impacts you. So Gita, tell me, so most of Europe and the Americas are moving to per room rates. And I know that Namibia is still hung up on per person rate, and it's something that it always perplexed me, and especially in African context, because most Africans have large families, they travel in large groups, so it really becomes unaffordable for families to travel. So is there any chance of Namibia also moving to per room rates? And perhaps tell us why do we have per person rate? What is the rationale in that?
Well, the pricing is based on the services provided. So if we were only providing a room that has either one bed or two beds, that you would very often find that people then would charge per room only. But many of our establishments do the full hospitality thing. So you come to a lodge and you get full board, which includes your breakfast, and it includes maybe coffee and tea. It includes dinner at some of the establishments, especially in the rural areas, and sometimes even includes activities. And obviously for that, you wouldn't be able to charge per room because every person would consume his or her part. It's like going into a restaurant and saying, I'm a family of 5, but I want to pay for one meal only. So either then you get the split up meal for, that the service is shared by the 5, but you cannot expect them to be paying the same price and 5 people are consuming or making use of the services. So we do have the singular and the double room specifications, and actually in Europe it works that way as well, where you have a single and a double room rate. Most of the rooms are quoted as double rooms because that's the standard. They would then have a singular supplement. So a room costs you, say, 1,000 Namibia dollars or 100 euros. A single supplement would then be up a little bit because, it's more cost effective actually to have 2 people per room. But in terms of the services provided, it is not only the room that is contained in that price. And for that, obviously, it makes a huge difference if there are 2 or 3 people staying in a room, making use of the amenities, using the bath towel, running water. One has to remember that tourism is quite an expensive business to operate. The operation costs in terms of water consumption, electricity, heating up, linen, the amenities that are provided, and that all needs to be costed into the pricing. So the pricing in Namibia is always based on what kind of services are provided, and that should be considered.
So as a consumer, can't we choose then? I remember we had this discussion with my siblings, and we were like, can we then not choose if we don't want breakfast, instead of it being forced on the consumer to say, because I know there's some establishments that say, okay, this is the room rate, but breakfast is on you. Like, for example, I don't eat breakfast. So is there a way that with the lodges and guest house can work on flexibility because each family has different needs, or is that not on the option?
It depends from property to property. You find some of the exclusive lodges that say, we are 400 or 500 kilometers from the next town. People won't be able to buy their own food. We do not have barbecue facilities here, and we would not want to have people come in there with their cooler boxes. For those exclusive lodges, you get the all-inclusive rate. But we have many of the other come-to-go facilities, for instance, where they say you're most welcome, you can use our facilities, and there's the barbecue. You can either buy the bride packs from us or bring your own. There are definitely these options. Very often, these prices, sometimes people get confused, and the tour operator is very upset because some of the lodges actually have a list of 2 or 3 pages of different rates and categories of pricing, depending on the needs. There's definitely, if you ask somebody the normal rack rate that everybody talks about, or the normal standard rate, there's only one item. But if you go deeper and if you request proper quoting from the establishment, they would be able to share with you that, yes, we are willing to cut to the bone and only provide you with a room, but then you have to make sure that you bring your own facilities or your own amenities. But it always depends on where it is, because I know we've also, with big events, have sometimes requested that we bring our own sponsored wine, for instance, or bring own food because we had food makers in the hospitality industry. And there are sometimes health issues where people say, no, but the liability, if something goes wrong, would then rest with the property. So there are always these certain elements to consider before doing it. But definitely there is room for negotiation and for sort of setting pricing as to the needs of the consumer. But in general, it is the whole package price that is considered or made offered when people ask for it.
And just to wrap up, to tell me, how do you your guest houses and your members really, how do you spur them on to really contribute to the communities in which their lodges are in terms of corporate social responsibility, the conservancies in which they're operating in? How do they really support, or how do you encourage them to support those communities?
Well, tourism is a hospitality industry, so we make people feel at home. Very many of our lodges in the remote areas, first of all, employ the people from the region and sort of involvement in telling the story. So the kitchen staff would come out and communicate with the guests and tell the stories. I've seen lodges where people have certain uniforms. So in the south, they would wear the Nama dress, and in the north, they would dress up in the Ovambo dresses and sing the songs and tell the stories. We have also got the Eco Awards Alliance certification program, where it becomes almost a point that you need to score to be able to get your certification program in terms of social corporate responsibility, upliftment of staff, training. That's something that Han also pushes very, very strongly, is that we uplift our people, we upskill them.
Right.
That has become, after COVID, one of the biggest problems worldwide, not only in Namibia, that we've somehow lost our skills. So in terms of employment, at the moment, there are huge vacancies up in tourism because we've lost many of our best people to other sectors in communication, in corporate service provision, because that's what everybody needs.
Right.
So that there are open employment opportunities in tourism that we currently are struggling to fill. We've had a German amusement park operator come to Namibia to source talent and skills from Namibia. They took on 30 Namibians last year, and for this year they're earmarking 60 to go and work at the Hansa amusement park in northern Germany.
Wow.
So the demand is there, the possibilities are there, but we need to have people with the right attitude and the will to actually be the hospitable hosts here in Namibia.
Wow.
And that's a challenge.
Thank you, Gita. That was really insightful. And I hope people are listening and they know now that there is opportunity in the industry to really grab if you have the passion, if you're willing to learn, and if you are hardworking. So thank you so much for that information.
It was my pleasure, and thanks for having me, because we always claim that tourism is everybody's business and we need everybody to get involved and really help us make Namibia shine.
Oh, wow, great. Just before we conclude the show, let us have a look at the economic indicators. And that brings us to the end of this edition of the Business Brief. Thank you for watching. We trust that you found the conversation very informative. Till we see each other again, from me, Morna Ikosa, it's goodbye for now.
This is Chucky Beat Strong One.
The big D, not the BSC. The rematch of the says, Bugula Gangs. Whoosh. I can see some of them. I wish I color them. Or maybe cover them. We want to cover them. I can see some of them. I wish I cover them. Or maybe color them. Tobia kanjafa, otodi mburu kwesimbo talio makafa. Shikwali kapata, atu pukuru rafi atu pukuruka. Onuole totara koni makutaja. Tukalu shikucha, komesho tauka. Kakuna mweneka, nukwali halilata, nenola meneka. Nashila koke paya, niyo yandupe. Some African attire, mkwanya meno power. Tangalo kesho kawa, defandi tengo tawa. Kucha konori, viyoko sasa. apo shiro shinji kucheki pande kinji opune yoroko owelo dukwete ne afondete la dula yonomdo owelo dukwete ne afondete la dula yonomdo I can see some of them